Okay, hey, greetings and welcome to the Mill Valley Public Library, the Mill Valley Historic Society First Wednesday program, actually on a first Wednesday. That's when we invite guests to present to you, the members, and I hope you're all members or planning on becoming a member, because either one is fine with us, generally talk about Mill Valley or the Bay Area. My name is Charlie Vogelheim. I'm an alleged millbilly, and I say that because if someone says, when I tell them I live in Mill Valley, they always say, well, where are you from? And I say, Marin General. Anyone else, Marin General? There we go. Now, problem with Marin General, it's a lifetime of saying town you were born, you have to say Greenbrae. And immediately people say, oh, are you a Packers fan? You go, no, it's a different one. So anyway, I as usual. Mill Valley, history-wise, not really that old. We became a town, as we all know, September 1st in 1900. This year is our quasi-centennial, our 125th anniversary. And I'm going to bring that up the rest of the year because, gosh, what a great celebration we had in September, the 125th. Let's give us all a round of applause for even knowing that. And some of us in the room here have been alive for more than half of Mill Valley's life. I'm honored to introduce, yeah, you don't have to admit it. If people say, how old are you? You just say, I'm mid-century modern. That's all you need to know. I'm honored to introduce tonight's program, but before I do, I want to remind everyone and myself what a great opportunity it is to meet here in this beautiful library that we have here in Mill Valley. And at this moment, I'd like to bring forward and introduce you all to Jennifer, and she is the History Room Archivist, the new one. Jennifer.
Good evening. How's everyone enjoying the rain? Good. I like it. I'm from Southern California, so this has been really nice for me. As Charlie said, my name's Jennifer Volland, and I'm the new History Room Archivist here at the Mill Valley Public Library. This is my first official event. Today is actually my 1-month anniversary for being at the library. Yeah, thanks. And I just wanted to say how grateful I am to be a part of a community that appreciates the value of local history. In my prior career as an independent writer and curator, I spent countless hours in archival repositories, and for me, it's really rewarding to be on the other side now, helping facilitate the research of others. So, as most of you probably know, we have a wealth of amazing resources in the history room: artifacts, documents, oral histories, maps, photographs, more. And I welcome you all to visit if you haven't, or to ask me questions after the program if you'd like more information. So before we begin tonight's program, I wanted to take a few minutes to commemorate a new donation from the Outdoor Art Club to the History Room, the Lytton Barber plaque that formerly lived in Lytton Square. And this artifact is symbolic in that it weaves together rich biographical narratives, a sense of community, and the enduring impact and importance of preservation. It's exactly the type of artifact that we hope will spark increased interest and attention in the history room, as well as in our mission, which is to illuminate and make accessible to all the unique and vibrant history of Mill Valley. So here to tell us a bit more about the significance of this donation is accomplished interior design and garden columnist for the Wall Street Journal and OAC President Michelle Slatala.
Thank you. I'm going to take it back at the end for the big finish.
Please do.
Let's see. Good evening, everyone. I'm Michelle Slatella, and I'm the president this year of the Outdoor Art Club. Thank you, everyone, for being here for this moment of remembrance and reconnection with Mill Valley's history. Today, or tonight, the Outdoor Art Club is very proud to present this plaque to the Mill Valley Public Library History Room, where it will find a fitting home among all the stories that define this town. It honors Lytton Plummer Barber, who in 1917 became Mill Valley's first casualty of World War I. And just as important, It honors the legacy of his mother, Beulah Barber, who was one of the outdoor art club's most devoted early leaders. Lytton was only 18 when he enlisted in the aviation service. A former Boy Scout and a fourth grade honor roll student, he grew up right here in Mill Valley, and he was the kind of boy who seemed destined to do useful things in the world. At a party, the night before he went off to training camp, his friends gave him what the local newspaper described as a memory book containing autographs and Kodak photos of all the guests, which he said he was delighted would remind him of home. But just 17 days after arriving at Camp Lewis in Washington State, he died of meningitis. His loss shook this small town deeply. By early 1918, the trustees had voted to name the town square Lytton Square, which is a tribute that has endured for more than a century. But as every parent knows, our children's stories are intertwined with our own. And Lytton's mother's story was intertwined with her own service to this town through the Outdoor Art Club. Beulah Plummer Barber came to Mill Valley in 1902, the same year that our club was founded. In the next 2 decades, she held 22 club leadership positions. That was a number that was counted up very meticulously by our club archivist, Melissa Kurtz, including club president in 1913-14. Her year in office was marked by real crisis and real courage. In July 1913, a devastating fire swept across Mount Tamalpais, threatening the town below. Under Beulah's leadership, Outdoor Art Club members mobilized instantly, cooking meals day and night around the clock for the exhausted men who were fighting the flames. And when the need arose for a place to tend the injured, she opened the clubhouse as a temporary hospital. In her year-end president's report, Beulah Barber recalled that, quote, more than one poor lad as he tossed in pain and weariness on his cot on our cool vine-covered porch, blessing the women who gave them so peaceful a shelter, gave thanks. It's a simple sentence, but tells you everything you need to know about who Lytton's mother was. Compassionate, capable, and quick to act when her community needed her. When her son died just a few years later, the same qualities she had shown in crisis, resolve, kindness, faith, and community, became part of the town's response to her. Mill Valley didn't just mourn Lytton. It honored the kind of family that had given so much of itself to the town's well-being. So this plaque, the artifact, stands for both of them, for a young man who never made it home, and for a mother who helped make Mill Valley the home it became. So on behalf of the Outdoor Art Club, I am honored to give this plaque to the Library History Room, where the stories of Lytton and Beulah Barber, I hope, will continue to inspire future generations to serve, to build, and to care for Mill Valley as they did. Thank you.
Thanks for being here, and thanks for including all of us in that. Lytton and Beulah aren't names you see a lot anymore, so maybe there'll be a revision. Back to what was I talking about? Beautiful. Again, what a beautiful county we live in, Marin, a stunning peninsula jutting south between the Pacific Ocean and the San Francisco Bay, skirted by the scenic and still undeveloped Marin Headlands. So when I was asked, did I spend much time in the Marin Headlands as a kid, the answer was a resounding no. And because we weren't allowed to. It was military. The headlands were controlled, fenced off, guarded. In the 1890s, the same time Mill Valley was developing is when the first of the many installations were being installed in along the headlands. Became a strategic military site, gun batteries, defensive structures, guard the entrance of the bay. Over time, there was 3 forts, Barry, Baker, and Cronkite, for the coastal defense. These installations lasted, of course, through World War I and II, and then even into the Cold War era, where the military operations ceased in 1971 with the deactivation of the Nike missile site up on Hawk Hill. It was sort of that long. The Marin Headlands became accessible to the public upon establishment a year later in 1972, the Golden Gate National Recreation Area. So let's tie this all together. Location, headlands, adjacent the ocean and the bay. Space is available because the military was there, it's undeveloped. So in just a few years, in 1975, thanks in part to Herman, who we'll learn about, the Marine Mammal Center opened 50 years ago. So, gosh, as I'm looking at that, the word marine is marin with an E at the end. So, well, you know, as you all know, marin is Latin origins primarily from the word mammalus, marinus, meaning this of the sea or of the mariner, and related to the word mare, which is sea. But once again, let's get back to this. Celebrated 50 years, the Marine Mammal Center has served as a global leader in ocean conservation through marine mammal rescue, rehabilitation, research, and education. If you didn't know, it is the world's largest hospital for marine mammals, also the world's largest for marine mammal research. Krystal Krucik is the public programs coordinator at the Marine Mammal Center. She leads program development, tours, behind the scenes, experiences, virtual programs. She's got a background in marine mammal rehabilitation, environmental education, prior roles at the New England Aquarium, the Ecotarium, the San Diego Zoo. She holds a bachelor's degree from UC Santa Cruz, fighting banana slugs. And she's a certified interpretive guide. She volunteers, obviously, at the Marine Mammal Center in animal care. And may I add, I understand she enjoys trapeze. Ladies and gentlemen, please a nice warm welcome to Krystal.
Thank you all so much again for having me here today. I am absolutely thrilled to get to be here. Now, we've already mentioned my favorite thing about being at the Marine Mammal Center is I am also on the receiving end of a lot of phone calls, and everybody always calls it the Marine Mammal Center. So I'm feeling right at home. This is absolutely perfect. And again, thank you all so much for having me here today. Now, as was previously stated, we opened our doors up in 1975. So we turned 50 this year, which has been a huge accomplishment for us. And I want to dive into that history, but before I do, I want to set a small background as to what we're like today so that we can kind of compare contrast to our humble beginnings. Now, has anybody been to the Marine Mammal Center before? Oh my goodness. Okay. I have to admit, I give free presentations on site at the center, and I ask that same question. And I've just gotten more hands here than I have at any point in time giving presentations actually at our campus. So thank you all so much for having been to the center. I can't wait to see what you have to add to this story and your understanding of our history as well. So thank you again so much for being here and for knowing us so intimately too. And don't worry if you don't, we love our new friends just as much as we love our old friends. Now, as was mentioned previously, we at the Marine Mammal Center are a global leader in marine mammal health, science, and conservation, and we're also the largest hospital for sick and injured marine mammals in the entire world. Now, that's going to be because we can see an average of about 800 to 1,800 animals each and every year. We cover a good number of miles. We cover actually 600 miles of our California coastline, and we also work out in Hawaii as well. Now, with this, we have remained a nonprofit since our beginnings in 1975, and I think that we're able to do this getting all of this love and support from our incredible volunteers because we have, I think, a really special mission to advance global ocean conservation. Now, again, with that, we have an excellent community of folks that this has gathered to our doors. So at the center, as a nonprofit, we have about 130 or so staff members, but really the folks that are making the work that we do each and every day possible are some of our about 1,300 volunteers, of which I know there are some active ones in the room right now, and I also know that there are some past ones in the room right now. So thank you so much for all that you've contributed in order to make us a huge success. Now, again, we cover about 600 miles of the California coast. That'll be anywhere from Mendocino County in the north down to San Luis Obispo in the south in California. We also now do work out across all of Hawaii, so the entire archipelago, with the United States' most endangered seal or sea lion, the Hawaiian monk seal. Now, of course, when it comes to our work, even with over 1,000 volunteers, 600 miles is a lot of miles to try to cover on our own. So we really rely on folks just like yourselves. Every animal that comes to our hospital has the sort of same start to their story. Somebody like you is out on those beaches and see an animal that might be sick or injured or even that you're just not quite sure about. You can give us a call at our hotline listed up at the top there, 415-289-SEAL. Tried to make that last bit a little extra easy to remember while you're out on those beaches. And that's really when we come in to start. We'll send some of our highly trained volunteers, like you can see in the top left corner, to rescue those marine mammals in need. You can see them rescuing a California sea lion in that photo. Then once they make it to our hospital, we'll rehabilitate them, acting just like a regular human hospital would. And that's what you see on the top right photo, one of our veterinarians using an ultrasound on that southern sea otter, so using sound waves to diagnose what might be going on inside their bodies. We also want to take the stories of every single one of these animals and better understand what it means for greater ocean health. How do each animal's story tie together to let us know what's actually going on out in the ocean that can tell us more as to why these animals might be coming into a hospital in the first place? That's where our research comes in, and pictured down on the bottom left, you'll see Carlos. He's our lab manager, and I think he just looks extra researchy in that photo for me. Then, of course, is our ultimate goal, of course, the release of each and every one of these animals that we can right back out into the ocean for their second chance at life. And that's what you're seeing here in the bottom right is some California sea lions happily running their way back out into their ocean home for that second chance, thankfully provided by Mark, who's in the audience tonight. So thank you for sending me your favorite release photograph. Now, of course, our story doesn't end here. While these are some of our main pillars, there's also where I come in and where you're helping me out as well with education. Now, we can be found, of course, on site at the center, delivering things like free programming, answering questions from some of our incredible docents that are on site, but also delivering things like tours. You can find us out in the community at fairs and events, or even from the comfort of your own home at marinemammalcenter.org, where we have pre-recorded virtual programs, activities like you see listed here, or even curriculum for free for any of my teachers that might be out there and interested as well. Now, again, I could talk about us forever and ever, so instead I have a cute video all about our impact over last year, just so that you can have a bit of a glance at what our impact is like, again, with an average of about 800 to 1,800 animals coming through our doors. I feel good. Couldn't get any cuter if I tried. No, of course, that was last year in 2024. We've now today in our 50-year history cared for about 27,000 individuals that have come through our doors, which is pretty incredible. Now, of course, today we're here to talk about our 50-year history, so I'm really excited again to get to share some of this with y'all. Now, from our very beginnings in 1975, the Marine Mammal Center has had marine mammal welfare at its core. This remains true today, of course, but while our organization has grown and evolved significantly over the years, we continue to respond to those marine mammals that are in distress and provide them with that life-saving care. But our mission now extends even beyond that, as you saw with some of our programming that we offer today. Now, while much of this work that we do is about giving individual patients the best care possible for their second chance at life, it's also about populations as a whole, the health of the ocean and understanding how it is connected to our own human health as well. So I wanted to start by thinking about where we got our beginnings and what inspired the Marine Mammal Center. Here are our three founders, some of the very best folks ever. I'm not biased in any way. But they all met actually while they were together at the Lewis Boyd Natural Science Museum. Now, our Lloyd Smalley, who's here, he was the curator of animals. Now, this museum happened to have a few small pens and pools for live animals, doing rehabilitative action on mostly birds and some marine mammals as well. Now, Smalley in particular became really passionate about the specific needs of our marine mammal population and started to dream up what it might be like to have a hospital specifically dedicated to the well-being of our marine mammal neighbors. Now, that's where he met up with Paul, who was the executive director at this museum, who happened to also work for the Marin County Schools, specifically situated within the Headlands. So had a really good insight as to what might be coming up available quite soon that might make a great space for a hospital directly connected to our marine mammals. Now, last but not least is Pat, who's here on the side. Now, Pat was actually our secretary of the board of trustees for the Boyd Museum, and she was really, really well connected. She was the one that actually managed to secure all of the permits that allowed us to be where we are in order to do the work we do, and still we pay only $1 a month to be where we are thanks to Pat. So has done some really incredible work. Now, if you're curious about that a little bit more and what that permitting process was like, she went on to describe the history of the founding of the center in a book that she created called The Marine Mammal Center, How It All Began, Recollections of One of the Founders, where you can read up a little bit more on that as well. Now, these incredible folks were looking at 1993, this Nike missile silo site, and said, this is it. This is where we want to be. And I think that takes some amazing creativity to try to dream up what we would become today. Now, you'll see a few buildings down at the bottom. Now, that today is actually some educational buildings from a different organization. There is a little greenhouse down in that area of native plants. Just rather instead, if you were to look up the bend where it appears as though there are some cars parked, that was for us. That was the place that we wanted to be, where today is now a parking lot. That's where we opened up the California Marine Mammal Center. You'll notice it might look a little bit different. Our name started with California in mind to represent the space that we were doing the work that we were doing. However, it evolved as well as we discovered the impact that we were having was indeed global, and we could continue on with that. So we dropped California eventually and now are the Marine Mammal Center, but this is one of our very first signs saying California Marine Mammal Center, and you can see our little logo there at the bottom is a little bit different from our current logo as well. I just think it's really cute. Now, this is where we opened up, and right from the get-go, even as we were just starting out, we remained open to the public to come and visit to better understand the work that we were doing. Now, at the California Marine Mammal Center, when we opened in 1975, we started with 3 donated bathtubs from some local hotels. We cared for 7 animals that year, starting with our charismatic first California sea lion, Herman, that you heard referred to at the beginning. Admittedly, that is our one northern fur seal patient that we had that same year, so not our sea lion, unfortunately. But I will say, later that same year, we were remaining top of the innovation. We upgraded from these 3 donated bathtubs from some renovating hotels to the kiddie pools. Now, of course, while these are a little rudimentary, they did allow for our volunteers and staff to treat more of these sick patients each and every year. So what started off as just 7 with Herman giving us our get-go is now, again, 941 last year. Now, I'd like to take you through the story of the center by highlighting some of our banner years and describing how that specific item of that year has changed over time. Now, we opened in 75, but in 76, we invited our very first school group to come and tour our facility. So this is from a high school that had come and, as you can see, was helping out a little bit with some of our rehab. They've got somebody in there with a hose helping out our kiddie pool stations where we're caring for these patients. Now, of course, while this was just the beginning, we had great plans to continue on. We were able to invite colleges soon after. This is what we looked like a little bit later on in the 90s, where we had started to invite colleges to come and attend our area to learn more about what this rehabilitative work looked like, felt like, so that we could get more folks on board with our mission and maybe better understanding how to do this work for themselves. Then we continued on. We began outreach. This is a little bit more of a contemporary photo, but it does symbolize the fact that we started to make our way out into the community, knowing that folks may not know that we existed. We started having incredible educational opportunities on site. This is a picture from one of our tours that we lead as staff and volunteers in order to best share our story with visitors both near and far, traveling from just Marin itself to worldwide. And last but not least, we've also developed incredible relationships with our high school and middle schools locally in order to take our message and put it into the classrooms themselves, where we can reach about 5,000 students annually that are just in our middle school team with curriculum within their classrooms that gets them thinking about ocean conservation at large. Now, this is a photo from a festival that we hold every year called Conservation Con, where we take these middle schoolers and we highlight their ideas to our own staff members so that we can see what the next generation is coming up with that might inspire us to make changes as adults as well. So huge, huge things happening on all different scales when it comes to education. We are also a teaching hospital, and a lot of that has to do with our research in particular. Now, our first research paper was published in 1979. Now, this was co-authored by Lloyd Smalley himself, and our first research paper was actually, just as you see here, about specifically rehabilitating northern elephant seals. That is what one of the smaller ones look like. We get them as pups. They're only born at 75 pounds, 3 to 4 feet long, about the size of your average third grader. So much smaller than the 5,000-pound, 15 feet long adults, but still quite large even as small young animals. So that first paper was just dedicated to their health and care. Now, of course, we continued on with this research, learning more about the specific diseases and how we can best treat them. This is actually an EEG and an electroencephalogram to monitor this California sea lion for seizures so that we could better understand the underlying diseases there as well. We also were not just looking at the diseases, but how we are best able to care for them, how we could innovate on the medical side. This now shows a picture of our medical director taking blood from a northern fur seal. Now, we've again published papers on some of these standards that we can set and say work the best ways in order to minimize our disruption on these animals and give them the best care possible. Now, of course, as a hospital, health comes first, but we also want to make sure that they succeed once they're released back out into their ocean home. So not only are we looking at the health and the care that we give them, the medical care, but also how they're treated in our hospital. And that's where we even end up with papers specifically on enrichment items or specialized toys that help get some of our younger patients that might never have been in the ocean before, something that they can use their brains and bodies in new and different ways to now innovate the way that they're cared for in a rehabilitative setting as well. Now, with all of this, it's really highlighting our work with our seals and sea lions, but marine mammals also include whales, dolphins, porpoises. So we had been working with these animals, but what really highlighted it, what really brought our work with whales into the headlines was in 1985 when we were working with a whale named Humphrey. I have H stuck in my head as Herman now. Humphrey the humpback whale. Now, it appears as though my slide isn't working great, but it sounds like many of you may be familiar with Humphrey. Does anybody remember what he was famous for? He got lost. So Humphrey went, unfortunately, up the Sacramento River, and so got lost. And that's where we were called in to get to work with him to reroute him back down into the ocean. So luckily, we were able to work with our friends in order to make sure that we could get him righted the right way round by blocking his access any further up that Sacramento River, hitting poles underwater to create sounds to deter him from swimming up forward, and using an underwater speaker towards the ocean that played the sounds of humpback whales eating in order to encourage him to move where he needed to go. Now, he was up the river for a few days, but eventually made his way out. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about our work with whales in a moment, but I did want to highlight a really interesting year for the ocean and especially the land. That was 1989, when we had the Loma Prieta earthquake. Now, I'm sure that you've seen photos like this in the past of the huge impact that this earthquake had. It was a 6.9 magnitude earthquake that was not far from us, just near Hollister area. Now, with this, it was so large it was felt as far south as San Diego and even into Nevada, causing about what, on the high end of estimates, is about $10 billion worth of damage. Now, while this is what we were seeing above ground, I do believe it had an impact underwater as well, because that year was the first year that we started seeing our California sea lions at places like Pier 39. Now, if you're at all familiar, the space was actually used initially for boats, the way typical piers are used. And these sea lions didn't fit great in that area, but they started to come in. It's a great spot for them. Those docks sort of rise and fall with the tides. They don't have to work so hard to get up and down. There's a ton of delicious seafood. And because it's quite shallow, it makes it so that their larger predators like sharks or orcas can't access them quite as easily. So this was a great place for our sea lions to go and hang out. But it did mean that it wasn't very safe to get to your boat any longer. We started to get calls from the pier being like, Marine Mammal Center, help us out. There's all of these sea lions here, and it's not safe for us to access. We said, well, they're protected with the Marine Mammal Protection Act of 1972, so if you can't beat them, join them. And I think one of the best things the pier did was just that. Instead, they created these larger floating docks that they now haul out on today that help act as a tourist attraction for folks traveling from all over to see our ocean neighbors happy and healthy, and it's a great way for locals. I know I go there myself as well just to get to see them, to get to hear their sounds and be inspired by the ocean in a way that we don't often get the opportunity to see quite so close. Now let's get back to those whales. Here's Humphrey again, but this time, rather than getting lost up the Sacramento River, he was stuck in the mud outside Candlestick Park. Now, he had gotten stuck in a low tide event, and you can see some members of the Marine Mammal Center there using wet towels to cover him, and that was actually to keep his skin from getting sunburnt, because it doesn't normally have access to full sunlight in that way. And then when the tide came as a high tide again, we just sort of lunged him back out, unstuck him, and got him right back out on his way. Now, luckily, that was the last that we saw of Humphrey in 1990, but it did bring a big headline to our work with whales once more. Not only were we working with individuals like Humphrey, but we started to research what the populations were doing. This is when we started sending boats out to get a better understanding at what our ocean neighbors, these larger neighbors, were up to, when they were coming in, how their populations were doing, so that we can get a better grasp as to what might be going on. on. We started to work to disentangle them from things like ocean trash when they arrived. This is the fluke of a humpback whale with a big buoy and string unfortunately lodged and stuck all around it. Now with this, we were able to work with 2 Bay Area nonprofits, the Golden Gate Cetacean Research Group and the California Whale Rescue Group. And with this, we are uniquely positioned to lead efforts to research and respond to these large whales as well. In fact, most recently, we've worked with the Benioff Ocean Institute in order to create Whale Safe, acoustic monitoring system underwater that is monitoring for these large whales so that we can keep track of where they are located to give real-time information to boats out in the water so that they know how to safely traverse the areas when there are whales present. Now let's jump into the 90s. In the 90s, we had huge impacts, and mostly in the way that we were able to operate as an institution. We were no longer in those kiddie pools. We had these larger fiberglass pools that we were using, but even during this time, we had our volunteers creating that ocean water for our patients. So they were making that salt water that we were purchasing from the city of Sausalito, that fresh water, brining it up and getting it into the pens and pools for our animals. And they would have to empty and clean them each and every day. So it was a really big effort on the case of our volunteers. Now, 1995 is my personal favorite because that's when we started working with otters. Anybody here an otter fan? Excellent, I love to see it. They're terrible, naughty little sea weasels, and they have my whole heart. Now, this was when we first started working with our southern sea otters, and this is what our first images looked like with that health and care. We were just learning what it was like to care for these otters, and man, did we learn quite a bit. In fact, we learned that unfortunately, this was not what was best for them, even if it was what was best for my heart. We learned that they were actually habituating, becoming more used to people more quickly than our seal and sea lion patients. So they had to learn from another otter how to be an otter, how to successfully forage, feed, groom, take care of themselves out in the wild. That's when we began partnering exclusively with the Monterey Bay Aquarium. Since they have full-time otters, we would send them any of the young pups that they would pair with a surrogate mom to teach them those skills. And we would take any of the juveniles and adults like this, which I think are still incredibly cute. Maybe not bottle feeding cute, but still incredibly cute. Now, with this, we were able to get to work with them in a really special way because this was one of our first animals that we were working with that was really classified under the Endangered Species Act, where they are today as threatened. And in our history so far, we've cared for about 750 otters, going from that initial population of 30 in the 1938, to today about 3,190 in our population here in California. Now, in '99 is when we opened up our Harbor Seal Hospital and Surgical Center. This is the Jeffrey C. Hughes Harbor Seal Hospital. Now, this opened in the Marine Mammal Center and actually is one of the coolest buildings that we have. And I'm not biased because I happen to volunteer specifically with the harbor seals myself. But it's really special because the entire facade of this building, this hospital, this miniature version, if you will, is actually that's where the button was to launch those Nike missiles. But luckily, Cold War button was never launched, but we kept the facade of that building to be historical, where of course the entire inside is now dedicated to the health and care of our youngest, most vulnerable patients, like these cute little harbor seals that you can see enjoying one of those pools that we have on site that's been built out and is much more accommodating to their needs. Again, this is also where we have our surgical center as well. So this next photo shows cataract surgery happening on a northern elephant seal. We were the first to do this surgery, and it is now used widely within zoos and aquariums around the world. This is also where we've done innovative techniques like the first root canal on a southern sea otter, as just one other example of some of the ways that we're innovating the medicine within this space as well. Now, all of this was happening pretty locally. Now, so far, we've been pretty much within the San Francisco Bay Area. We started to think about what expansion might look like, and in 2005, we really expanded all the way across the range by dedicating a space all the way down in San Luis Obispo to act almost like a triage area, almost like an emergency room, if you will, for any patients that were coming from down south that might not be stable enough yet to make that drive all the way up here to Sausalito. Now, this is one thing that we were able to do in San Luis Obispo, but we also have another facility that opened up actually earlier this year now in Castroville, moving our Monterey Bay operations into that space as well. So some pretty exciting things happening all throughout our range. Now, in 2009, we became the center as I know it today. This is when we had a rebuild of the center that we were able to be further up the hill now, building now about 56 pens and pools, an automatic water filtration system, so we no longer had to do it by hand, quadrupling the amount of patients we could theoretically care for of now up to about 300 animals all at once, and where we now have a dedicated visitor center as well. Now, with this, it opened up in June, including a state-of-the-art hospital, those modern research facilities, and that improved access. And it couldn't have come at a better time because that same year, staff responded to about 1,704 marine mammals in distress. Now, with that, we continued on. We thought that this was incredible, but we wanted to see what our impact could look like even across the Pacific. So we started to work with the most endangered seal or sea lion in the US, the Hawaiian monk seal. We opened up a hospital in 2014 called Ke Kaiola. That means the healing sea, where we were able to work with specifically this seal. And that's because their life history is actually very similar to that of the northern elephant seal, which is our second most common patient. Now, this is what the hospital looks like on the inside. We call it the burrito. It looks very much like half a burrito. And if you're curious what that cute seal is like, the Hawaiian monk seal is probably one of the most charismatic of the seals that we work with, looking the most adorable. Although if you have the opportunity later, I do suggest looking them up with some audio because I think they sound a little bit like zombies. They're quite gurgly. Now, all of this to say that we've changed quite a bit throughout our history. We've been very fortunate in our efforts and really excited to move forward the way that we have. So what is it like today? This is a view of the backside of our hospital where you can see some of those pens and pools and some of our overlook there. Now today, the Marine Mammal Center, I think, is still pretty special. We've rescued about 27,000 plus animals, and these are our main species of concern that we work with. The number one patient that we see each and every year is our California sea lion. I joke they're our best research partner because we get to see so many of them. We'll see in second place those northern elephant seals, and in third place our Pacific harbor seals, with a smattering of these other species within there as well. Now, of course, our work is incredibly seasonal, as you might imagine. So if you were to visit actually today, you would see a lot of animals, like our California sea lions in particular, with a bacterial infection of their kidneys, a disease called leptospirosis that also affects 1 million people each and every year. You'd see some of the same things in them that can happen with us. Again, thinking about how our ocean health and our human health are intricately connected in that way, in ways that as mammals, we're all seeing the same sorts of things. So how can treating them inform the best ways that we can keep ourselves safe as well? How is this a living laboratory in the ocean that allows us to better understand the health that we have here on land too? Now, I think the best time to visit is in the springtime if you were looking for a hint of a really good time to come. It's when we are full of mostly young elephant seals that are just a few months old and doing what I call the seal symphony of just being incredibly, incredibly loud. So I hope to see you in March, April if you'd like to see lots of elephant seals, but there truly is no bad time to visit the center. What I think is really most special is that no matter when you come, you'll see dedicated people. while we do go for the animals, people really do stay there for the community of support that I think is so special that we have at the center, that you're able to see that passion and that drive within each and every volunteer that is donating and spending their time with us to make sure that our world is just even a little bit better. So I have a really, I think, cute video next to talk all about our 50th anniversary and what makes us so incredibly special. Not just our volunteers there, but folks like you that care and are our incredible supporters as well. Oops, right after I say video. Oh no, we tested these before, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna see if I can find it, and if not, well, darn. The good news is that this video is on our website. It's on the front page. It's also on our YouTube channel. I highly recommend it. It's very cute. It's just our 50th anniversary video. It's like 5 minutes long, but it's a really good homage to mostly the people that we work with, including each and every one of you, that makes the center so uniquely special. So I wanted to just say, as we're looking at some of the pillars of our work here again, that our work at the center is about people and teamwork. It's about dedication and commitment. It's about science and research and contributing to a greater understanding of our planet. It's about growing and learning, something we've really excelled in these past 50 years, is continuing to grow and thrive, and teaching the next generation. And most importantly, it's about each and every one of us as a community, our supporting groups, without whom none of the center, our 50-year history, would be possible at all. So I'd like to invite you to join us as an ocean hero. You can come and visit us at any time. We are free and open to the public. We're open on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Mondays. You can make a reservation online. You can make sure that you're keeping a safe distance from these marine mammals, so we keep as many of them out of our hospital and healthy out in the ocean as much as possible. Or if you happen to see one in need, give us a call at our hotline, 415-289-SEAL. As an added bonus, if you're the first to give us a call about it, you get first dibs on naming that animal, so come up with some fun names to keep in your back pocket as well. And last but not least, you can also donate, whether that's time or finances, to us to make sure that these animals get a great second chance at life. I'm gonna stick around if you've got questions. My information is up there as well, but thank you all so much for your time and for thinking about us at the center. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah. And we're going to take you up on the questions.
I'd love to.
Actually, right here. We got time. And again, we're going to go till about 7:30, and then if you've got, you can help us put the chairs away, that's always welcome. But questions, does anyone? Yes, please.
Now, the sea otters used to be only about Monterey, and I hear they're working their way north. How far have they gotten?
Yes, so this is a question about the sea otter, and lucky you, I just went to a symposium last week about otters, so I've got the latest news from the Alaka Alliance. And so as far north for the southern sea otter, that's the species that we have here in California, is still just about Monterey. They haven't moved that much further north. We are seeing an expansion of their range, however, south. So down by San Luis Obispo in Morro Bay is another very strong group of the southern sea otter, and for the first time last year, there was actually a small raft or group of otters of about 5, so very, very small, actually all the way down into Mexico. Now, there is technically another subspecies of sea otter, the northern sea otter. Those are the ones that you'll find up in Alaska, and they actually are also looking at their range and what it means to expand them, maybe down south. So right now they're seen in places like Oregon, but there's a group in Washington looking to create habitat for these otters to return in once more. So there's a lot of research going on, in particular trying to figure out what we might need in order to better encourage our otters that act as keystone species and real amazing aspects of our ecosystem to return. Great question. Oh, great question. So most of the work we do for our whales is out in the ocean, making what we lovingly call house calls. Now, this can be anything from disentangling them from ocean trash to even, we were the first institution to give antibiotics to a freely swimming whale through a dart gun. So it doesn't always look super cute, but it's a great way that we can make sure that any whale that is in need is getting the health care that they deserve.
Over there.
Where do you release the elk and seals and sea lions nowadays? Because we used to do it at the Fairlawn Islands when I lived there, and now I think it's at Drake's Bay. That's how they do it there.
Yeah, just right next to Drake's Bay. So about 90% of our releases are done at Chimney Rock, up in Point Reyes. And if you happen to be there, they usually happen at like noonish on like Wednesdays or Thursdays. We don't advertise them specifically because we don't want them to be overwhelmed by people. But we do have a way that you can watch them live without being there too. We have a webcam that we partnered with National Park Service to set up. So if you text the word release to the number 65179, you'll get a notification every time we do one of those releases, and you can watch it happen live on the webcam. It's so uplifting to get to see this. 65179. Of course.
So earlier you were talking about how your old system involved salinating fresh water and then putting it in each day. Does the new facility operate differently? And this might be kind of a dumb question, but why salinate water when you're so close to salt water?
Not a dumb question at all. Great question. And it does work in the same way where we're purchasing our water from the city of Sausalito. Our system reclaims about 86% of the water that we use. So it's kind of on a drip system. We're not purchasing large amounts all the time because there's about 1.5 million gallons of water through our system at any point in time. But we do this in particular because we're really careful about everything that our already sick patients come into contact with, including the water they're swimming in. Now, sometimes they're in our hospital because of harmful algal blooms happening in the ocean that might be causing or making some things worse for these animals, creating diseases or just, again, making them worse. So rather than bringing in that ocean water and then treating it, we find it easier to just make it our own from the get-go so that we know exactly what they're all getting. Now, I will say we only salinate it to about half as salty as the ocean itself. Since they are mammals, they don't breathe in the water the way that a fish does, so they can actually be in fresh water. But having salt water is really good for any external cuts or wounds, so that's why we salinate it at all. But then we can save a little bit of money for not making it as salty as the ocean.
Right behind, yeah.
Couple of questions. First one is, when you release them, do you geotag them and track their health and what migration as they leave? And with the leptospirosis, is there any solutions that are happening?
Great questions. So I'll do the first one first, which is about tagging our patients. Now, I have some examples of tags in my bin there, so I can show them to you afterwards. But every single animal that comes into our hospital is tagged with a flipper tag. Now, that's going to be orange, and it kind of works like an ear piercing in order to go through the cartilage in their flippers, so it stays on their whole life long with a specific number or specific letters and numbers so that we can identify that one to its medical chart. That way, if that animal ever comes back into our hospital, we have its history. Now, it's not a smart tag, it just is a visual tag. So if you ever see an animal out there with an orange flipper tag, take a picture of it, send it to me. We love getting to see where they end up. But for any of our special cases, for some of the endangered species we worked with, as an example, or any animals that we're releasing of particular note, like if we're studying success rate after things like sarcocystis, a muscle wasting disease as an example, we will tag those animals to get a better understanding of where they're going, if they're succeeding, and the spaces that in particular must be conserved for them to thrive and survive. Now, the reason we don't do it for each and every one of them is unfortunately funding. We are a nonprofit, which is excellent because we aren't tied to the government, but it does mean that those tags that can be about $2,000 to $5,000 a piece are not in the cards for all 941 patients that we get into our hospital. So we do it a little bit more selectively, but when we can, we try our best to. And then And then, yes, and then the disease for leptospirosis. What's interesting about leptospirosis is it does affect lots of different mammals. There's a bunch of different suravars, so basically different varieties of this disease. And the one that we see in California sea lions is the same one that we see in people and in dogs. Now, there is a vaccine for your dogs. I highly suggest getting it because we are in an outbreak year right now, so your dog may already be vaccinated against it. But there is no vaccine for sea lions or for people. The people one is no longer in creation because it just didn't make money, unfortunately. It mostly affects folks in countries where they don't have access to as clean drinking water. Now, with that, there's not really a ton that we can do. It is an endemic disease within the population. It lives with them all year round. So the best we can do is try to treat it and better understand the disease process so that when we end up in these outbreak years, we can get them in and out of hospital as quickly as possible, getting them right back out into their ocean home for a second chance at life. Unfortunately, while we can't vaccinate against this one, even if we were to trial out the dog one and see how it could work in our sea lions, we would have to vaccinate the entire population in order to find success. Generally, you're shooting for about 90% of the population for success in any vaccination. There's about 250,000 of them. We can only get to so many of them each and every year, so it wouldn't work for us great that way. But we have successfully vaccinated our Hawaiian monk seal population, which is about 1,600 animals, against things like morbillivirus, basically phocine distemper, which has been really, really exciting. That's a really excellent question, too. It was about the Palisades fire. Now, what was really particularly interesting about that is lots of runoff and things happening that are going into the ocean for the first time that are particularly plastic-based or man-made, and what those things are sort of leaching into our natural environment. Now, there's a lot of research that's still happening on that, so right now we can't say anything definitively. I do believe that it had a big impact on particular species that are a little bit more near shore, so think our sea otters, think our harbor seals would probably be the most affected, but unfortunately the research is still ongoing, and we probably won't know for maybe even a few years what the real impact was of that Palisades fire. Great question. I love what I do. I have the best job ever. Yes.
So can you comment on the incidence of human damage, like shotguns or other things? I know that was an issue for many years.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it does still continue to be an issue. Sometimes that human impact can take many different forms. We see less shotguns, arrows, things of that nature than we have previously. Now, unfortunately, it's been really hard for us to track this in the past. However, there is a really famous sea lion case who was named Arrow, maybe a little bit macabre, because he was shot with an arrow. And we were able to track the serial number on that arrow to actually bring that person to justice, who served jail time and a large fine. Now, we aren't actually the enforcement. It goes to NOAA, and they handle everything. The National Association for Ocean and Atmospheric Administration, they actually took care of all of that enforcement as the federal agency that we are permitted to work under. So we see less of that, which is excellent, although we do still see it. It happens, unfortunately, almost every year. More what we see today is people that are either really well-meaning but don't understand when they get too close or their pets get too close, or people that are really excited and want to take a selfie with a seal that can actually push mom away from pup or make her feel so unsafe and uncomfortable to return to her pup that she will abandon it in order just to keep herself safe. So that is more of the human impact that we see today. And that is typically about 20% of our population that we get each and every year is unfortunately due to that human impact. So make sure that we're sharing the shore with our seals. I have tons of pamphlets. Some of them are specific to that. Take as many as you want and share them with as many people as you can.
Okay, just a couple more.
Excellent question. So it was around why whales would beach themselves, and this is research that's ongoing across the entire United States. My best understanding of some of the hypotheses behind this, because we don't really know, is that animals might be beaching themselves if they're already sick or injured and are sort of confused, ending up along our shores, or if there is a large event happening in the ocean that might push them to shore. Now, it's really interesting. On the East Coast, I used to live in Massachusetts. Whales beaching themselves there was not as big a deal. Their bathymetry, their underwater geography slopes really gently, so sometimes you would end up there on accident. You could just like push them back in the water and they would be fine. Whereas here, we have a very drastic drop. So we're only seeing along our coasts that when whales beach themselves, they are really unwell. There is something wrong with them. Now, we do animal autopsies called necropsies in order to better understand what those underlying conditions might be so that we can learn from that, see if we can prevent those deaths from happening in the future. But unfortunately, there hasn't been one common strand that, as far as I understand it.
Wondering if you've suffered any loss of federal grants this year or other important forms of financial support?
Excellent question around our funding. Now, we are a $22 million operation, so we're big, and we're 90% from private donations. The rest of that mostly comes from educational tours and things of that nature. Now, the good news is that we are mostly private donations. We're only about 5% grant funded, and those are going to be grants that we apply to like anybody else. We did lose one grant this year that I'm aware of. We may have lost more, but the one that I'm aware of was specifically around climate change education, which you might imagine with the words climate change was the first to go. But if you're curious about that, I actually also teach those classes, so I would love to see you there too. We've continued on.
Well, what we're going to do is, it's 8:30 now. We're going to clean up the room slowly. You've got a great display here, so let's put you there, and anyone that has more questions, come up and talk to you about it. Don't forget, at the first one that finds the seal, you can name it, and
Yes.
throwing it out there for Linton or Beulah, just as a possibility, so unless that's already taken. So.
Not that I know of.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks so much for being here, and thank you for your enthusiasm. Really
Thank you
appreciate
so
it.
much. I really appreciate it.